So now I welcome with me here in our studio Joseph Paradiso. I'm very happy to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm delighted to be here.
Joseph Paradiso directs the MIT Media Lab's Responsive Environment Group, which is researching new sensor technologies for interfaces on the one hand, but also for spaces which enable a new interactive experience. Something you've been working on, so various fields. Some of them are, for example, spacecraft control systems or also electronic music instruments. Currently, he's also Associate Professor of Media Arts and Sciences at the MIT, and I'm really looking forward to being able to talk to you now about some of the many things you're interested in.
I'm delighted, happy to fit in as much as we have time for.
So let's start in space.
Sure.
On the moon. So your research group has started several space-based projects over the years, and for example, one of them is a sensor net slated to be possibly deployed on the moon over the next couple of years. Can you tell us more about this project?
Sure. It's something that actually I'm particularly taken by and occupied by now in my group. It's such a great opportunity. Space is a different game now. There are more players involved. It's very easy to, relatively easy to get things up into certainly zero gravity, into suborbital flights. We've done many of those, have payloads on the space station, we've done lots of them. But now the moon is opening up because there are lots of missions slated to go to the moon. Some of them are commercial. Some of them have landers that do have available space, and MIT, I believe, is securing space on at least one of them, if not more. So this won't be necessarily one trip to the moon. It could be many trips to the moon. And we've done a lot of sensor nets for monitoring environments. I've even exhibited some of that stuff here at Ars Electronica, doing artistic mappings on top of the sensor data. So we're good at making sensor nets. One of my students who's recently joined the group from the AMS experiment at CERN actually was very interested in doing space-based projects, and we converged around the sensor net for the moon. So we've designed one. It was part of his master's thesis. It's very small. You know, we'll have some solar power capability, can last for a while. It can host a bunch of sensors. We're talking to some of our colleagues at CERN actually now too about little radiation sensors we can put inside. That's one of the interesting things you want to measure on the lunar surface over time. A few other things we can try to do. And we've got a decent shot at getting it on that rover. So we've got to work really fast. The design's got to be more or less set within 6 months or so, maybe even faster. But we already have the baseline design finished. So I think it's refining it, finishing off the sensor payload. But yeah, at this point, the moon is not so far away. It looks different to me. When I look at the moon now, it doesn't feel like it's that far.
And what makes the moon such an interesting subject of research?
Oh, it's certainly close. So we can start doing things on the moon more rapidly and quickly and trying things out. So you know, people will go there and will perhaps even live. If you can live anywhere in space, the moon is the place probably where they'll live at this point, at least some sort of a colony, because it's accessible. Not a great place to live. We can talk a bit about the feasibility of space colonies. It's really complicated. But going to the moon is intriguing just because we can try things there. And also scientifically, okay, you look at the old universe, you know, you got to look at how things came together, where the moon came from, have some idea. We can get better ideas about making measurements. Water is a big issue on the moon. It's there. Can we find it? What is it like? So we can start to scrabble at bits of that. But just the fact that we can get there and try things, it's an opportunity.
And while we were talking, we were joined by Gerfried Stocker. Good to have you here now as well. Hello.
Yes.
Normally we'd have an excited hello. We're on TV though, so we can't. Gerfried's he's such an old friend. It's so good to see you, Gerfried.
Yes, thank you so much for coming, and sorry for sneaking in here late. There are so many things still going on, and people try to talk and present.
That's the festival life.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it really makes exciting.
Yeah, I've walked through the festival with you before. I know what it's like.
And it's even more so a real Ars Electronica when you're here to participate.
Oh, it
This
is.
really, and you probably were already talking about mainly the scientist, Joe Paradiso?
Well, a little
Or
bit.
already about the musician?
No, that
synthesizer?
I'm happy to talk about
we haven't
that
got
too. You know that part very well.
But we've already went to the moon by now. So, and you've been explaining to me that the interesting thing is that the moon is so close, so it might be something of a space laboratory
Yes.
for space science.
Yes, exactly. It's so going to become so accessible that we can try things, including our projects. I'm sure you're thinking about it too, because there are payloads that we can all become part of now that are going there. So artists can start to think, and even these sensors we're putting on. You know, we do a lot of work with artistic interpretation of sensor data. We've shown a lot of that here at Ars Electronica. We'll make music out of those sensors. It'll drive some model with virtual reality visuals. We'll do something.
What other things apart from radiation are going to be measured by the sensors on the moon?
At this point, we looked at trying to find water, maybe with ground-penetrating radar or capacitive measurements. You really want to go deep, so we see if we're going to get a GPR like the Chinese have put in. There's one coming out of Haystack Observatory at MIT that might fit into this payload. We'll look. Seismics, if possible, with an accelerometer. You can start measuring, some level of seismics with small accelerometers. To really do it, you need a bigger one, but we can start doing maybe some things. Those would be some of the main things. Temperature, of course, how it varies according to the day and the pole. But if we can have a chance to look for water with a GPR, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the holy grails. You
mentioned that some of the work, your space-related work, has already been exhibited at Ars Electronica Festival. So, Gerfried, maybe you can tell us more about some of the projects that we've already seen at the festival or festivals.
Well, how many hours do we have?
Yeah, that's true.
The joint history of Ars Electronica and Joe goes back.
Yeah, we go
really very far.
I first heard about Ars Electronica. It was in the mid-late 80s because Conrad Schnitzler was here with his megaphone, right? And I was a real fan. I'm a fan of prog rock, electronic music, prog rock, all of that. And that caught me. I had to come. When I heard about that, I had to come.
Great. I still remember, I think also a very early project where you had this dancer musician wearing your special shoes. I mean, nowadays we see so many of these projects of students exploring or also artists exploring sensors to sense body motion and create music and dance. What actually were the motivations in these early years, and we are talking about the 90s here, where you already explored this on a very high level?
That's why I came to the Media Lab back then. So I was doing a lot of sensors for other things, spacecraft and stuff like that back in those days.
Because you were in Zurich also?
Yeah,
at
in
the
Zurich at ETH.
I don't know if you talked already about
no, we haven't been there.
Scientific or European scientific history.
Yeah, I was 4 years in Europe working with CERN. Then I came back twice for summers working with Large Hadron Collider. So I did a lot of high energy physics, and I love CERN. We've talked a lot about CERN during the heyday. And I'm so glad that CERN got closer to you guys too. Yeah, I was doing that kind of thing. Repeat your question, Gerfried.
No, it was in particular the kind of motivation
for the shoes.
I mean, not only the shoes.
Yeah.
I mean, being how should we say, serious scientist at CERN and doing particle physics, and then coming into this field where
there's the other side of my life, which you know. I've been building synthesizers since I was in college, actually. I wanted always a large modular, which was the big thing to have back then. I could never afford it, so I had to figure out how to build it, and I did.
I think we are making too many shortcuts for our audiences because we know the story so well. Because what I'm referring to is that Joe Paradiso is one of the fascinating pioneers of modular synthesizers, actually.
Yeah, well, I guess I know all the real pioneers. I take mine, which I built as a kid, really, and push it into weird spaces. It still grows, Gerfried. I would love to bring it to the festival, but I can't because it's too big. It's like Rose Red, Stephen King's house that grows almost by itself. So I'm still working on it.
In 2004, when we had it here, and just wasn't enough time to really dig in our archives and find the videos, because it's really like the the kind of almost, the classical image of modular synthesizers, like a huge wall of something, and then you see a small little Joe Paradiso in front of it, and patching.
It was pivotal for me, because I had done a lot with it before. But when I brought it to Ars, I discovered a depth in that synthesizer I never knew existed. I do a different piece every day, start in the morning, go on. And the kids and the audience in general that are coming hadn't seen a modular. Now they're big again. They came back.
They're celebrating a big comeback currently, modular synthesizers.
But there's one particular difference, because I mean there are many, of course, musicians working with modulars and having the big assemblies, but you built everything yourself. You even developed it. I mean, it's not just well, there is some instruction, some YouTube tutorial, and you solder here, solder there.
I designed it.
Developed the circuits. The circuit boards, you solder it, you put it together, and you're playing it as a musician.
Yeah, of course. That's why I built it, so I could have an instrument, the instrument I wanted to use and play. And of course, my time is always limited since there's so much to do, but I'm not letting it go. I'm still doing a piece every year. I do a few pieces. It's so much fun. And if I have a challenge to do a deeper piece like I did for the Plasma Fusion Center, I love it, because that gets me immersed in it, and I keep finding something new. Of course, I'm always building new things. But just in what I have, there's always a deeper level to get to, which is fun.
And what makes you still making it bigger, still trying to continue
the ideas
it?
Don't stop. Every time I use it, I think of, it'd be good if I had one of these. Or maybe I could maybe buy a Eurorack unit, kind of, but it's not really this. I'm just going to make it. What I'm building now is a vowel generator from Bell Labs I had when I was a kid. So even before I had the synthesizer. And I trashed it over the years. I made some recording way back, but it's gone. But I found one on eBay, and it's 3 analog LC filters, and I can digitally switch now the capacitor. I can drive it into overdrive in many different ways. I can put it into different configurations. It's a big module now. I have to get the time to finish it before I forget what I actually built. But I can think of the kind of sounds I can make with that, and I'm just excited. And of course, it won't do exactly what I think, but it will do great things, and I'll be able to use it.
I mean, what I really like always being with you, and it's really dangerous. You know, I wanted to be Connie here with us, because if we are going to start talking about this kind of techie things,
we can talk with our common language.
Oh, I'm the limiter. I'm the limiter.
You're the limiter, the translator, putting sense into the whole thing. Because I always get carried away with your stories and this kind of combination of the excitement that you have by being able to build things, but also the excitement by being able to use things. And I think this is a very interesting paradigm. We talk a lot this year about, how to deal with these digital realities, how to create maybe also new way to see the hierarchy between technology, development, the commercial application, and the people. And I think in a certain way you are unifying this, being this always super curious, excited engineer, but also thinking about how can I use it, and what does it mean if I really apply it to something.
And of course, the things that I do with it quite often aren't relevant for most people, at least when I do them. 10 years later with the shoe, right, then you see Nike Plus and other things kind of coming. But I think of, this is so wild. This is just the power of the idea. We just have to, I got to build it, because this idea is going to consume me. So I build it. And unfortunately, I have students that are very good and capable of building things too. So we're doing all kinds of projects. We're always building new things. And the people that come to my group, most of them are artists as well as scientists. You know very well the kind of people that fill those niches. And it's just great to have a team like that at the Media Lab.
I would like to step in now, because I'm also personally very interested. You mentioned earlier that the space game has really changed recently.
Oh, totally.
And I would really like to know what you and also you, so you both think about this, the new players who entered the game. Is this good for space research, space science, or is it a problem that private corporations do now have their interests in space science?
Oh, it's so outstanding that we have this, because there are lots of other ways to get stuff up. And there are a lot of opportunities. We don't know what space is good for yet. We know one thing. There are answers. So we can go out there, we can look for life elsewhere, stuff like that. There are answers out there. So how the universe formed, all the missions that are flying, we're learning so much. There are opportunities for artists or other people to do things now more than ever before. And who knows, there may be a commercial reality to space beyond low Earth orbit. This is a dream. We don't know if it's going to really happen or not. I heard it in a seminar, one of the Air Astro faculty say, we don't know if the business is still going to be photons going back and forth, which it is now, or actual material going back and forth. We're set up now for material. Let's see if there's a sustainable economy that can do that. But all things are possible now. So it's exciting. And we can do stuff much more quickly. You know, who would have thought we could put something on the moon? We just thought about it 6 months ago. There was a chance to get on a mission, and we did. And it was unthinkable.
Gerfried, have you also always been enthusiastic about this new development?
No, I totally understand this part of the enthusiasm. If you are in the position to make use of it, to utilize it, like in your case, and if you are backed up or come from an institution that is trustworthy, I think everything is fine. But then again, I mean, considering the huge amount of money that is already in play, and as you also indicated, that will develop as a huge business. I think, of course, there's a very big problem if private people are deciding about it. I mean, we had this in history. It was also like the private people, the merchants, who put the money together to colonize the world, and we know how badly they behaved, because it didn't. Very soon you switch from exploration to exploitation. And I think this is something where, I mean, it's totally fine if the rich guys pay for it. They should continue to do this. But I think every time we go into uncharted territory, and I mean, we know enough probably about at least the space around Earth to know what we are doing, but in terms of consequences, what kind of businesses, what kind of influences could come, there are still many open questions, and we need somehow the public, the people, represented by the state, by responsible institutions involved in it. So I think at least we really may have to make sure that universities and research institutions that have also the public trust. Of course, like MIT, like Harvard, like others, like Princeton and all over the world, they should be involved and shouldn't be only on the mercy of these rich guys. I mean, it's almost, I mean, it was like long time ago, Charles Darwin had a great chance, you know, to hop on a ship which was actually not really made to be, the intention was not really to be a research ship, but it was more a commercial thing, and he could go there, and by the way, he discovered something. I think we need to be more careful also, or more purposeful, and say, okay, if you rich guys are going to explore the space instead of the state, then you also have to take the responsibilities, not only the possibilities.
It's a great comment. I mean, in many ways, Gerfried, but I think the role of government is going to be to look further, right? NASA's, I've been going to JPL quite a bit and talking to the directorship there about ideas and projects, and it's just an amazing place. But they embrace all of this because they think, again, the more ways to get up there, the better. But also, NASA's role is really to look further out, to explore. And the commercial role will be closer in. We don't yet know what the commercial role is going to be, but it'll be closer in. I think if you just have a mad conflicting rush of interests that aren't aligned and aren't aligned with the public, that's not going to be good. We don't yet know, again, what space is going to be good for beyond just, again, getting photons back and forth and internet and stuff. That makes its own problem with space junk, and that needs government regulation as well. So at so many levels, it's a dialogue between government, between industry, and then you got to keep organizations like the ESA and NASA looking further out where there's no commercial application, but that's where the answers come from. So we got to make these missions that are really going to astound us.
I also think that the international collaboration will be extremely important. I mean, we have now not only Russia and US, we also have China, India, so more and more countries are jumping into this. And I think, again, in particular, I think in the role also of universities. It might not necessarily be the government, because the way how government is seen in US or in China or in Europe or is so different. But I think universities are a kind of common idea that there is some fact-based knowledge that guides exploration of new territories.
I agree, including the arts. I mean, universities also are bastions of all of that. Just for going to the moon, I mean, I agree with you with this international perspective. The students that's developed the lunar nodes is a Chinese national. He's a Chinese student at MIT. He came to me by Sam Ting, actually, highly recommended. And he's working with a German student at CERN. And we have people at Haystack Labs at MIT involved, as well as us at the Media Lab, maybe AirAstro. It's a combination. So it's the Americans, including the space establishment, the Chinese, and CERN. But it's not official. We're not clearing any of this at a government level. These are MIT students, MIT affiliations. We're just informally collaborating with a certain guy. Hopefully now that they hear this, they don't shut it off. There is always a level of decision-making and bureaucracy everywhere. But it's one of the wonderful things about it. It doesn't matter where you are. This is an opportunity. People come from everywhere. They discover things in themselves. And when Fenzheng goes back to China, which he wants to do now to work in the space agency, he is a great contact between the global community of space research and the Chinese program. And let's hope that widens and doesn't narrow, especially when you look further out at exploration. That belongs to everybody. And I think the people at JPL believe this, and NASA, certainly at universities, we all believe it. It doesn't belong to any one country.
And since you mentioned also earlier that the NASA has to look further, a very pop cultural question, but how intense is there still the interest of finding life in outer space?
It's the big question of the time. It means so, you know very well, but it means so many things. It's our own future, right? It's also, is all of this stuff just for us, right? Because the universe is big, probably for a reason, because it takes a lot of probability space to roll the dice enough to get life, advanced life like us, to form. So many random things. Some of them are convergent, where thermodynamically it's favored and you'll converge towards something. But there are a lot of them that aren't. I think there are enough gaps in that chain that you need a universe full of stuff to make us, probably. So I don't think there's much life, at least of any sophisticated nature. But we'll find out. That's the beauty in our lifetime. I mean, in your lifetime, yes. In my lifetime, probably. Gerfried, you're probably somewhere where we're both up there, but we have a good chance. It's one of the things you want to stay alive for.
When we talk about space exploration, I think that humanity is still at quite an early stage, even though it's already been going on over decades. But isn't it kind of a good thought to think, okay, we are going to get this right from the beginning, because there's so many other things, like we've been talking about digital humanism and how we can now gain back put back the social dimension into technologies in the internet that is now being controlled by the big capitalistic players. So how can we put the humanistic dimension already in space exploration from the beginning, and also how we treat space, so that we don't treat it like an all-you-can-eat buffet, like we treat our Earth, our own planet already now?
I think there's a lot of questions there that deal with things we barely understand right now, but connecting people to space is something that we're very interested in, because we did it with Doppel Lab here at Ars Electronica, connected people to our building, connected people to a wetland at Tidmarsh, connecting people through sensors to other landscapes using the vision of an artist with AR, VR to bring it together with the actual data. We're going to try to do that with space as well, so that people can go along with some of these missions in different ways. Even for NASA operations, right? You've got to combine all this information in an interesting way and bring it up to the people that are involved. So the whole idea of what presence is, that's one thing I've talked about with people for a long time. The definition of presence is changing with sensors and sensor nets that we can plug into. In terms of what we're going to do out there, I love things like The Expanse, all these sci-fi stories of this planetary culture that's all over the solar system. I don't know if we're ever going to get there, because space is kind of difficult. It's not made for people. And you can't really go out in the beautiful air of Linz like we can. And you're going to be able to terraform? Maybe, but that's way, way off, not very probable. Any environment we build in an actual large spacecraft is still going to have deficits. So though we don't know yet, we're inventing it. So who knows what role people have there? Exploration, yes. Going to the moon and finding things out, yes. Mars, further out, I don't know. Some people probably walk on Mars. Will we go and build a colony? I don't know. By the time we do it, and this is one thing Gerfried and Ars understands, humanity will change. Will we still want to go to space by that time? Because we'll discover other things we can do. So I'm not sure that we're really going to go out en masse. I don't know if it makes sense, but we don't know yet. It could be. And let's go with that dream. I think it's fine for now. But put a few checks on it. We've talked about several of them here.
I would love to listen to both of you for hours and hours going on. I'm really, I'm quite sad that I got the role of the limiter in this conversation, because I'm the one who has to break off now, sadly, because we are continuing to the next point in this session. But thank you so very much for coming in and giving us a tiny glimpse into the broad field of research and interests you're doing and you're having.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to come here. Thank you.